something, an alternative study, and that's why we have called to this. This is part of that routine conversation.
Well, what fee are you proposing then per student? If you're not going by what we're suggesting here, you're saying it should be based on student increase. What's your fee you're proposing per students to, equal some kind of impact there?
So this information was provided to really help understand what the range probably should be. My guess is that Wasatch High School is more than the average, but less than what Alpha High School is. So that's probably going to put you around the $40,000 range.
Where do you list that on all of your papers? I don't see that.
I haven't given a proposal of what the fee should be. I just provided information that's, I think, for the two boards to now determine.
So the $64, what is that per trip?
The $64 per ERU was what, that was your fee, that was your fee rate in
that
OA.
number in the other. I'm not even sure why we're discussing the high school, etc., because I thought that we were not going to be able to charge you anyway on the cafeteria impact fees, according to what the property ombudsman has recently said. So I'm not sure why that was even talked about here.
The scope that was given to me was to study the high school. I guess I thought some of your fees were still in dispute from when the high school was built years ago.
Well, it's resolved.
Yeah, we understood from consultation with our attorney.
If you accept for that cafeteria issue, I don't think that's an issue.
We thought that the only thing that was outstanding with Heber Valley Elementary was the $920 city sewer fee, and then the Heber Valley Special Service District $2,500 fee for Heber Valley Elementary. And then we thought that according to the property ombudsman's ruling, that we should be able to assess the $20,994 street impact fee for the school bus garage.
Okay.
Can I clarify? I've been involved with that process. The ombudsman is not made to do it.
Sorry,
The
the
ombudsman
ombudsman
is
what?
not made to do it.
Well,
We
we have a
participate.
ruling that I showed your colleague here from the Dixie Montessori, let me find it, here we go. Boyer-Dixie, Dixie Montessori Academy ruling, July 2015 from the property ombudsman's office. We did glance at it briefly. This is what we were given, leading up to the discussion of why we could not charge the cafeteria or the Heber Valley impact fees except for the sewer. Okay, but why we still could charge the $20,994 on the bus garage.
And all I'm suggesting now is if you ask the ombudsman, I don't think he would say he's issued a ruling concerning any of these issues.
This is a precedent.
So I want to go back, I'll go back to the
Those
high
fees
school
are still in
and address
dispute with
that. I
us.
think when we were trying to work through all these issues, just after I was put on the board, so many, many years ago, there was some discussion about some fees that the city still owed the district and the district still owed as far as impact fees, but because we could never come to an agreement on all of these issues, I think we still consider, and if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know, board members, that high school impact fee had not been completely resolved. We felt like that was still too much that was charged to the school district and it hadn't been completely resolved.
So you would agree to the $40,000 thing then, using the per pupil idea that you just presented?
I think that as a board, I'll just state my opinion, as board's working, as you know, that you have a discussion together.
Right.
So what we did here was look at a different methodology because we felt the methodology of square footage was not correct. It was assessing way high. And so yeah, as a board, I think that we are looking at this as a more fair and accurate assessment, not only in our opinion, but by the studies that have been done. And so I would think that we would tend to agree that this type of an impact is a fee as opposed to the square footage methodology.
I'm very interested in hearing what you think is fair. And that's why I was asking the question about what would you propose as a per pupil fee instead of our regular methodology of the square footage. And I didn't really get a per pupil fee other than a $40,000 figure that has been alluded to. And I feel like this is an issue that's going to keep coming up, right? You're not going to stop building schools, and we're not going to stop having people move into our valley. And so maybe this is something that needs to be put into a future settlement that we could consider, you know, from your view as well as ours, about future impact fees based upon number of children and what kind of fee you're willing to offer, you know, and then we can compare it to the way that we have to do it with everyone else. We have to make sure that we're not discriminating against other people because we have the other standards. Does that make sense? We can't be capricious or arbitrary when it comes to the way we would assess it through you compared to everyone else in the city,
So,
okay?
yes, let me ask this question. I think it's a fair question. Do you perceive that you would treat a school district the same as you would any other development? When you
That's the
say that
goal.
question.
That's the rule of law, that's the goal.
How is that a law?
You see, in our
That's the
understanding,
ordinance. That's the ordinance.
and I'll have, I guess, our council help with this, our understanding is that school districts can be treated differently as a government entity. So that's where we're, partly where we're coming from.
If we're talking about the legality, I think the ordinance clearly gives the council discretion.
And not,
That's what we're suggesting.
Well,
What's
that's
that?
why I want to entertain what your proposal is, because this issue's not going to go away. And
I
we'd
think
rather
that-
resolve it now than
That
drag it out.
we want to figure out what we know for what's been done and what we can do going forward. I think you're exactly right. And I think what we're saying is, at least as I'm understanding it, that having a square footage way of calculating, as opposed to a per pupil way of calculating, results in an unfair result. So let's change the methodology and going forward to deal with the per student that's been validated by traffic studies and ITE things that Mr. Bird has talked about. And let's agree that that's the way we calculate the numbers, and let's just move forward. And they are what they are, we pay it. So,
And we appreciate
so
that.
I think that gets away from all the, I think it is a change in methodology from what the city's calculating method has been in the past. But I think that it's one that would be fair to the school district and the city, and pay it and move on.
Now, is this only referring to street impact fees? Because the sewer impact fees are a separate bundle, separate calculation, and especially the Heber Valley Special Sewer District, you know, they have their own fees in their calculation.
And we'll get to that in a minute, but this methodology that we've gone through is just for traffic. We have some other calculations for water.
And can I ask you a question about the school bus garage? What is your capacity there for how many buses you can put into that school bus garage, you know, now that you've added to it and so forth? What's your capacity above what you have right now?
There's a total of 48 bays.
48 bays? And how many of
That's
those
not a
48
problem.
are you using right now?
They will be using every day.
So you would have to enlarge it again
No,
for more buses
we
in the
enlarged
future?
it, we enlarged it a total of 30 bays.
You enlarged it 30 bays. Now, did you already have those buses, or did you buy more buses once you enlarged it?
No, the buses were all there, they were all sitting outside
Sitting outside.
where they were double parked in the existing garage. They will no longer have to double park in the existing garage.
Just a couple comments, and Mark, help me here if you will. I guess as we've gone through this process, I thought the city and the school district would work kind of closely together to try and come up with a methodology that treated the school district best we could based on, you know, whether it be square footage or pupils or that. And so I kind of distinctly remember that we reduced the impact fees by looking at acceptable methodologies to come up with the numbers we did at the high school. But maybe that was maybe for more water and sewer related items. I'm not 100% clear on that.
It's true.
Yeah.
It was water and sewer, Mark, as I understand it. And then the road impact fees have always been based on this, and that's been in my opinion, that's been the basis of the road impact fees dispute, and it was based on square footage.
Let me, I guess, make a couple comments to clarify this on this methodology. The city specifically doesn't use numbers like per pupil. Other areas we do it as restaurants, they want to do it on per chair. there's different methods, to use to calculate, and we specifically avoid that because years ago we found that people manipulate that. They come in with very low numbers and to get low impact fees, and then they come back and, when later on, and of course it expands. And so we tried to come up with something that was consistent, quantifiable, was not easily manipulated, and that came out to be square footage. Now, we always give people the option to do a traffic study because that is going to be more accurate and customized to the specific situation that's being considered, come up with the number of trips. And initially the school came up with a traffic study, and we went by that traffic study on the number of trips that would be generated, and it came up with a number. And that, we were asked to go back and look at it again. It was a lot of money. And so we said, well, we'll go back and look at our standard method that we use with everybody, which is square footage. And it came up with a lower number than what the school's traffic study came up with. We said, we do this with everybody. We're fine doing this with the school. And so that was the number that was generated for the traffic impact fees for the high school. And so I didn't think that number was in dispute until now, and so I'm not really prepared to go into a lot of detailed discussion on Paul's analysis of that.
Well, it's certainly a different kettle of fish if the city's methodology, which we've always thought came in too high, is coming in underneath the traffic study and giving us the benefit of the bargain. That's good news, but that's not the facts as I understand them. And I'd like, if that's true, thank you very much. Then there's not an issue, because if we've got our numbers, then
So,
live with it.
Bart, are you referring to the traffic study that was done to look at how wide should 5th East be, or how wide should 1200 South be? That was more of a Heber City South regional study.
They had, I believe, in there a number for the average, because the numbers we base it on are average daily trips generated, added by the facility. And so we took that number and it was higher than what our normal method would be.
Can I ask if those traffic studies that do the average daily trips, do they take into account football games, basketball games, plays, concerts, and all the other activities that bring in large crowds after the school, on the evenings and so forth?
It's a great question. Do you know the answer to that, Paul? The question is, does the traffic study take into account all the extracurricular stuff like plays and dances and ball games and other things into calculating that impact?
Well, Bart, do we require on our traffic studies, do we require that taken into account?
If you use our normal method, it's got a definition, and it goes based on average. You use it based on averages, and so sometimes it'll take it into account, sometimes it won't. And that's why we offer to people to do a customized traffic study for the facility, because that'll be more accurate usually.
Well, do they take into account the off-summer months too? Do they average it out, for every day of the year, so to speak, when the summer is, certainly not going to have that impact on the streets?
It's an average usually for when it's in operation.
So, Bart, I guess I would like us to go back to the traffic study that you used, because remember that was to determine how wide should roads be, were turn lanes needed. That was looked at mostly at peak hour conditions where impact fees are based off of your average. The other thing that study also included was all of the ranch landing development, because remember they joined in the traffic study at the same time. So you have the senior housing, the Abington, all of those condos.
Yeah, we can go back and check it, but I believe they had the high school spelled out.
Right, but I think that was, I haven't looked at that study for 8 years, but that was peak hour, because the improvements it was looking for were, this is more on average day.
Yeah. And they had an 82 number too, average daily traffic.
Was this type of methodology proposed at the time and rejected, or you're just now introducing this for people, I guess, Is this something you and the city talked about?
No, this is new information that they've come back with now.
This came because the ombudsman, during the mediation conversation, as I understand it, said, school district, you're gonna pay something. City, you're gonna have to look at your methodology. So put your heads together and see what you can come up with. And this is the effort to do that.
And when the city came to me and said, hey, we've been assessed impact fees, we think they're high, and I was told it was based on square footage. I said, hey, based on my experience on other schools, it's been based on
So
students.
all the other times you've worked with schools, they've always done it on students and not on square footage? Or you're just saying that's one other option?
It is another option. I will say in some of the other schools that we've done, they weren't assessed the street impact fee.
Can I ask one more question about the traffic studies? Do they do it at the max capacity of the school?
Yes.
Or do they do it, okay,
Which is why ours is based on 2,000 students.
as the max capacity?
Yes, instead of like 1,850 where they're at now.
Or do 1,100 we started?
Didn't we start out with $1,800 max capacity, back from 2000?
I'd have to go back. The other, see, the one thing that it does by switching to the square footage, and this is what we've mentioned before, is the one disadvantage of that is then every time you have an expansion of square footage, gross square footage, then whoever it is, we charge them an additional fee for that. So, and that's what caused the rub with the cafeteria. It was, well, we're not adding any more students, so why should we be charged for this? Well, that had to do with the methodology that we used. If we had assessed it all at the beginning, actually we did look at that and said, well, if we'd have followed the traffic study to begin with, they would still pay more, even with the cafeteria on. But then we've learned more of some of the legal issues involved with that, and so.
That's kind of new information that I had. So I think maybe it sounds like, based on Councilwoman Franco's and Crittendon's questions, there's some good things to still look at in your comments. Maybe more confused than I was when I came in. I apologize for that. But I think if there's a stomach for coming up with a way of creating a methodology going forward that the school district feels good about because it's based on student populations. And if there's a formula we can apply that takes into account all of the things that you brought up without having to spend $10,000 every time on a traffic study, that would be a great resolution. So,
Can I make one more comment on this? From what Bart's saying is, if the agreed on before was 131,000, the traffic study before was more than that. And what I'm showing here is that if we use the maximum per student rate in ITE, which is almost 4 trips per day, we're half of what the city and the school district ended up in their negotiation. So that means that we'd almost have to be twice of what the ITE max was. I don't see how that could be possible for this high school. I wonder if the peak hour numbers were being used as opposed to the average day. We need to look at it, but from that standpoint, Bart, it just seems like, 8 trips per day per student is pretty unrealistic.
I don't think that's what it was, but we can go back and look at it.
But that's what it would have
we're
to be.
hearing is that
That's what it would have to be to get those numbers. So we just need to take a look at it and see what it is. That's, when we talk about with in the negotiations and conversations, can we come up with a different methodology that is based on the standard? That's what we've tried to provide. It's based on the standard.
if we make an effort to try and do that, and quantify it, and come up with a number, then that's something to talk about.
Mr. Bradshaw,
Can I just clarify something here? Because I feel like we're kind of jumping all over the place. And
I think your study is really talking about the high school, right? And the cafeteria expansion, as
It's
well
talking
as.
about the high school, the elementary
Original
edition.
high
A
school.
lot of the debate right now has been on the high school traffic
has.
study, right? And your methodology versus what Bart is saying, right? But I think we're coming from the city council based upon our legal advice and our city manager. We're not asking for those cafeteria impact fees. We're not asking for them. So the methodology that you're proposing right now is something for the future, right? Where probably we'll have to give a little bit on both sides, and you'll have your per pupil idea, and we'll have our square footage idea, and we're just going to have to see what we can do. But we need to do something because this issue's not going to go away. Now, I'm hopeful that you're amenable to the Heber Valley Elementary City Sewer fee and the sewer district fee. $920, $2,500, that's still outstanding for that. But as far as the school bus garage, okay, let's talk about that. We can't use it per pupil out of it, can
Let's
we?
have Mr. Bird go on to the green part, and then we get to the bus garage.
Okay.
Do that.
You also have to discuss water and sewer.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I
You haven't discussed water and sewer, have you?
Not for the high school yet. What I'm hearing from Councilwoman Franco, though, is that the city feels like there's really nothing to discuss about the high school, or I think the board I'm representing feels like it does. So, how would you like to proceed? You want to finish with the high school or not?
Go ahead with the water and sewer, let's
Okay,
go through it quickly.
I'll go quick. So when the high school was built,
May I stop you? Mark, as I understand it, we did not know of any outstanding water or sewer fees for the high school. So do we have them or not?
Some letters to the district indicated that we thought the impact fees of the high school were always all there was like a several $100 difference that the city gave to resolve that.
So, anything outstanding?
I think he's saying they were overcharged, he's not saying
They were overcharged?
That's what he's arguing.
I understand that.
I think what we're going to demonstrate with the water fee,
Why don't you go ahead with
what I want to show here is that when 2 3-inch meters were installed at the high school at the fee of a little over $42,000 each, they paid, or were to pay an impact fee of $84,700. When you look at their metered use since then, the average, if they were assessed on that impact, it would only be $30,000. So every time they add something to the high school, really that impact fee was already paid when they paid the meter charge, or even had overpaid. So when Bart says, hey, we look at it on a square foot basis, or how many fixture counts have you added, what this demonstrates is that they were overcharged by quite a bit, so let's not keep adding each time because it's already included in the meter fee.
That's the way we do water. Just as you said, they buy the meter, we don't charge them anymore unless they need a larger meter.
So that kind of contradicts what happened at the Heber Valley Elementary School, where I believe from the sheet I saw, you then assessed impact fees for additional fixture counts at the elementary school.
Sewer only. Sewer only. So the water meter is based on ability to place demand on the system. And so you have to have oversize pipes and storage and the like. And so unless you add more meters, there's no additional impact.
Okay.
Are you challenging the sewer fees?
No, what I'm seeing is that both sides are even disagreeing on what they're disagreeing about. So I'm just going to continue to proceed with the study that I was asked to prepare, and then I'll let you guys hash it out.
go ahead.
So on the sewer for the high school, I do want to point out that from what we've metered as the actual use on water versus the fixture count basis, you can see that those two are pretty consistent. So we are acknowledging that that fee basis is fairly close. So now let's go to Heber Valley Elementary. The addition to the elementary school was 8,600 square feet. Based on the rate for trips per square foot for that type of school, the city assessed a fee of almost $12,000. However, when you look at the number of students and employees that were added, using that same impact fee rate, we feel like that should be $2,800.
Okay, water.
Water goes back to the school has a 4-inch water service. An impact fee was paid of $67,000 and change based on the metered use. Looking at that, the actual impact is a little less than $10,000. Again, sewer for the fixture counts for the new addition. This is only the new addition. The city wanted to assess an impact fee of $1,658. When we look at the total use of the school, and the addition represents about 20% of the students in the classroom space. When you factor that into the meter use, the impact would be $1,260, or $1,260. So those two are fairly close.
Okay, on the bus garage.
On the bus garage. So I've heard that the city wants to assess traffic impact based on the total square footage of the new buildings, which would be for a total of $25,000. If you looked at the total number of employees, going back to the argument on schools, is it based on students or is it based on square footage? Using that same argument of square footage versus total employees, the impact fee would only be $882. School district's argument, though, is we haven't added any employees. In fact, really, all we've done is taking buses that weren't covered in the past, were double parked, and now giving them their own space. So there really isn't an impact in that there's new buses driving around that area. They're just covered buses.
Councilman Franco, what I think I remember us discussing earlier was that the building is expanding in size and
Yeah, and that's
higher
what my
usage.
perception is.
And I'm not hearing that, so we
I
still
can see
think
that
that.
now.
So the buses, the number of buses being used now the same as 10 years ago?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Well, I'm asking, who knows?
Francis?
We'd have to look at that, because I don't know how many we actually added, or if we just replaced, or we'd have to go back and see. Our transportation
Bodies
trust.
increased, I would assume your number of buses to bring into the schools would increase.
That is sometimes the case, however, as you build more schools, busing decreases, because the area that you have to
That's
bus.
just a question.
Plus, we did a split time so that we didn't, the elementary start an hour later, so there's no, that actually decreased our number of buses.
If the argument is that it's going to be, if it's based on the number of students at the school, then it shouldn't be imposed again on the number of buses at the drop, because those two, it's so, it's a great question.
So instead of the 20,994 fee, right, Bart, that we would like paid, you're proposing 882, or none at all.
Yes.
On the street.
882 or none at all.
And that's why that's why we go to square footage, is because we always get this argument, we're not increasing anything, whether it's a school or anybody else, and you guys can decide what you want. So it doesn't matter, it always comes in low. People say we're not using it for anything else, we're not increasing anything, but over time, it increases. Either their use increases, they use it for other purposes, more people come, and we don't come back and assess unless there's a change in square footage. We don't go monitor how many people they have, how many employees they have, how many seats they have, how many cars they have. It's a one-time thing that we guess as accurate as we can based on square footage at one time, and it just always expands. That's just the nature of buildings and uses, and so that's why we default to the square footage. That seems to be the fairest way, at least for the city, to assess these things. Now, you may come up with a customized solution just for the school, and that's okay, as long as we agree to it so we know going forward that that's the basis for the methodology.
Bart, I've always agreed with that when it comes to commercial uses, because a commercial building one day is a small retail shop, the next day it's a restaurant, the next day it's something else, and so that changes. So square footage is maybe the most appropriate way to do it. Schools, I don't think you see that variable very really.